Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. Let's learn computer science. Our today's topic of discussion is URL and role of DNS. Syllabus reference is given here. It's mentioned that you should be able to explain how a uniform resource locator is used to locate a resource on the www and role of DNS, which is also known as domain name service. So let's start our today's session. First thing that we are going to discuss is uniform resource locator. So you all access websites, you all open documents when you surf internet. So you always type www dot something dot something, right? So maybe it's www.google.com, maybe it's www dot some other website name. So the address, the unique reference address for the exact location of an internet resource on the www is known as uniform resource locator. The identification of any web resource on the www is uniform resource locator. So it serves as the unique identifier for web pages, files, images, videos, or any other resource which is accessible on the World Wide Web. Now, in your syllabus, it is also mentioned that you should be aware how URL is used to locate a resource on www. So there is basically a linking of web resources because of which users they are allowed to navigate the internet and access the specific web pages or files. Now, to do this, to accomplish this, there are various components of URL that helps in accessing web pages. So we'll have a look at these components. So when we write a address, when we open any web page, any website, we always write www dot something dot something. So the syntax is always like this: HTTPS or HTTP slash website address, that can be www.google.something. Then there is a path, the actual path in which directory, which file is located, or is there any subdirectory where the file is located, and then the actual file name that we access, the actual HTML page that we access. So this is the syntax. We'll discuss all these components in detail to understand how URL is used to locate a resource on www. So first thing that we need to understand is protocol. Protocol, you all start your web address as www dot something dot something. However, it always starts with a protocol. Protocol, you all know, is set of rules of communication. When two devices they communicate, there are some rules, and those rules are known as protocols. Usually, it is either HTTP or HTTPS. So S stands for security here. So it denotes that the web page that you're opening is secure, right? So the protocol is usually HTTP or HTTPS, and it specifies the communication protocol to be used when you access a web resource. Then comes second component is website address. Now website address, it identifies the specific website or server hosting the resource, right? So when you open your email address, which maybe it's on gmail.com, so where that Gmail, the code of that website is located, which computer is having all those resources, that becomes your server. So website address basically identifies the specific website or the server hosting the resource. So here in this example, www.google.com is the website address. Now in a website address also there are components. So first component is domain host. So www is known as domain host. Then comes domain name. So name of the website, which is here Google. Then comes domain type, which can be .com, .gov, .org, .net, sometimes it's a country name, .uk, .india, IN. So like that. So for a website also, there are few components: domain host, which is www, domain name, which is actual website address, name, and domain type. And then sometimes there is a country code also written, right? So that's the second component of URL, website address. Then comes path. Now, path specifies the location or directory on the server where the resource is located. So we do organize our files in the form of, so directories. So there is one folder, inside that some subfolders are there, and then there is some file located maybe. So exact path in which main folder, then which subfolder, or which subfolder, or which subfolder, and then the file, the actual path of all those folders and subfolders, that is to be mentioned here. For example, in this example, www.example.com/blog/article, here blog/article is the path, right? So blog is the main directory maybe, and then there is an article which is subdirectory or the folder. So this is the path. Then comes file name. Now file name is the actual file which is to be accessed in these folders. So maybe its name is index.html. So www.com/blog/article, and then in the article folder there is a file kept which is index.html. So that is how complete file name is written. So protocol, HTTP or HTTPS, then we have website address, then we have path, then we have file name, right? That is how URL is used to locate a resource on www. So if a question comes on role of URL, you can mention about all these components and then explaining how the actual file is accessed, right? Then comes DNS. Next topic mentioned in your syllabus is DNS, role of domain name system. Now, before we understand what domain name system's role is in accessing web pages, what is DNS? So DNS, basically, you all know now, it stands for domain name system. What it does is, now we humans, we understand, we remember letters, names instead of numbers. So that is why we name everything, right? Whether it's computer, whether it's humans, whether it's pets, we name everything and we remember anything in this world. We have named it, and that is how we remember things. However, if we number things, it's difficult for us to remember. But we know, in the previous session, we have discussed that there are IP addresses. So each computer which is connected to the network, they have some numbers given to them, which are known as IP addresses. However, we computers, we cannot remember all these numbers. So to ease out the process, to make it easy for us to remember, we have given names to the websites. So websites are what actually? They are saved somewhere on some computer. So if we need to open a website, we have to go reach to that computer, which actually is having some numbered label, IP address. But because we can't remember IP addresses, so we have used this domain name system where names are given, URLs are given, and then they are converted to those IP addresses, their corresponding IP addresses. So who does that? Whose job is to convert these URLs to those IP addresses which are numbered? That is where DNS comes into place. So DNS, basically, it translates domain names into IP addresses, right? So it enables users to access websites and other resources using domain names instead of IP addresses. So to access any computer, you don't have to type 192.168.5 something. Instead, you just type www something. So that is easy to remember. Rest everything is the job of DNS. They map them. Whenever you type something, how that we'll learn in today's session. DNS servers, they store records of domain names and their corresponding IP addresses. So this is also important that they keep that log, that which IP address has its, what URL is corresponding to that. So that record is maintained. That is how they map them together, right? So let's understand what is the role of domain name system and how web pages are accessed actually. So if you look at this image, users, they first of all, they type the address, right? They open the web browser, then they type the address, any web address. They can type www.google.com, let's say. So basically they place a request to open some web page. So user will open the browser, they'll type the address. So that's the request placement. Then your browser will connect with the will try to connect with the web server. But how that connection happens? First of all, DNS server will look for the corresponding IP address in its log. If the DNS server finds it, good enough. If it doesn't, then it will look for that in other DNS servers. It will connect with other DNS servers and will look for the corresponding IP address. Once it gets the corresponding IP address for the URL which user has typed, then it sends it back to the user, and then the connection is established, and then the request is fulfilled. So let's have a look at the main pointers that you can write if any question on that comes in your exam. So user enters the URL in the web browser. DNS helps find the correct server that holds the website or resource you want to access. Now, how it happens? DNS server stores records of domain names and their corresponding IP addresses. So there is not just one DNS server, there are many, and they maintain this record that these URLs, they have these IP addresses, right? So they maintain this record. Now, when web browser sends a request to the DNS server to find the IP address associated with the domain name, your DNS will check its records, and if it knows the IP address, it will send it back to your browser. If it doesn't have it, then it will ask the other DNS servers until it finds the correct one, right? Then once your browser receives the IP address, it uses it to establish a connection with the server hosting the desired resource. Your browser then requests the specific resource from the server using the IP address, and then server sends the requested resource back to your browser, allowing you to view or interact with it. So that is where DNS role comes into place, right? So these are the steps. You can have a look, right? There are questions 2, 3, 4, 5 markers based on this topic, right? So you can just note down these points. Now let's have a look at some past paper questions. These questions are from October, November 2018. Now question is, computer A needs to access a web page. State how computer A could access the web page without using the domain name service. Without using. So without using, you need to type the IP address instead of URLs, right? So simply you have to write using IP address because there is no DNS. That is what they have mentioned. So if no DNS, so you have an option to type the IP address directly. Then there is one more question. Gopal types the URL of a website into the browser. The following sequence 1 to 5 describes the steps that take place. There are 3 missing statements. Okay, so these are the statements. We need to pick and put them at the right place. So 5 steps are given, statements are given. However, we need to put them in place. So they have written that Gopal types into the web browser. We have just understood the process, right? So first of all, you type the URL, then browser sends a request to the DNS server for, to make the connection with the web server. Then DNS figure out the actual IP address. If it is there, it sends it back. Then the actual connection happens. Then the retrieval of data happens. So let's have a look at what they have written. So they have written Gopal types into the web browser. Then second point is missing. So in second point, they have written the 3 missing statements they have written is DNS finds corresponding IP address, web browser sends URL to domain name system, and DNS returns IP address to the browser. So it's clear that last point C is the last point, because in the end only data will be retrieved. So here first point is Gopal types into the web browser. Then second will pick from here. Web browser sends URL to domain name server. So I have written here. Then DNS looks up the URL in the table. Then we will write, because this C is the last one we have already figured out. So A is going to be written here. DNS finds the corresponding IP address, not the IE address, it's IP address. Right? So that's how questions will come in your exam paper. So that's all for today. With this, our unit 2, all topics are covered. So we'll start with next topic in upcoming videos. So that's all for today. Thank you.